Solarplex is a, a platform for communities to hang out in. And our goal is to help community leaders, aka creators, for instance, to have a 10x better engagement and retention user experience than traditional social media. The way we do this is almost like a hybrid of subreddits and feeds. Communities that have feeds. Each of these communities have moderation policies that are very specific to them. Each of them have posts that allow you to do interesting things like mint digital collectibles from, or being able to react using digital collectibles in a way that you cannot do anywhere else. And if you see what Reddit does today, you buy digital Reddit gold for $3 and you can give, based on nice comments, right? If you fuse them together, we're like, well, why is it that Reddit gold is worth nothing off of Reddit, right? Why is it that Reddit stickers are worth nothing? You can't even use them anywhere. And we have the ability here to make them much more general. So we took a leaf out of sort of Facebook reactions or LinkedIn reactions in Reddit, and we combined them together to create the reaction packs, where we now work with artists to create really fun reaction packs. Ultimately, creators want to recognize their audience by giving them rewards, but audiences want to recognize the people that they care about. And today, there is no easy way for you to recognize or reward the people you care about, or even, for instance, fund them in a way that makes sense, right? Like, as an example, BTS in Korea is the only company or band in the world that has their own shares. I mean, maybe Beyonce could do this. Maybe, people of that caliber could do this, right? And then if you wanted to contribute to Beyonce beyond just buying their albums, you would buy a share or BTS shares, as people already do, right? That is a very, very hard thing to do in the regular world because of regulation, all these things. And so we see tipping as the first step towards creators being recognized directly by the audience, right? And some people have experimented with, I think Drip House does a great job in sort of showcasing recognition in that way. And we feel like, yes, that's exactly the right way to think about it, because what crypto really brings to the masses is the ability to do microtransactions as recognition for their favorite creators. And what can we do to really expand the horizons and scope of this is kind of our goal there. A fundamental thing we always sort of look at is, how do you get that first 1 cent into somebody's wallet that has never done crypto before? It's impossible right now. Like, you have to connect KYC, you've got to go and transfer, you've got to buy some Sol or ETH or whatever you have, you've got to transfer it into your wallet. That's a pretty high barrier for adoption, which is why in our system, the way we think about it is a wallet is a receptacle for your incentives and your rewards. That wallet can be either one you hold, or you can have somebody else hold it for you, like a, custodial setup. Either way, you as a customer do not need to know how it works in the background.
Welcome to episode 11 of Into the Forest with Pine. Today I have Vixit from Solarplex. How about we start off with you introducing yourself and kind of what you're working on?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, I'm Vixit. Solarplex is a, a platform for communities to hang out in. And our goal is to help community leaders, aka creators, for instance, to have a 10x better engagement and retention user experience than traditional social media. The way we do this is almost like a hybrid of subreddits and feeds. Communities that have feeds. Each of these communities have moderation policies that are very specific to them. Each of them have posts that allow you to do interesting things like mint digital collectibles from, or being able to react using digital collectibles in a way that you cannot do anywhere else. And our goal is to create this sort of really fun environment for creators to engage with their communities. And by doing this, we hope that we can leverage some of the sort of best parts of Web3, the blockchain, NFTs, and things like that, to cater to a broader audience who has this very specific need today on other social channels.
Yeah, so kind of what gave you the idea to kind of start working on this, and what kind of problems does this solve compared to traditional social media?
Yeah, great question. The way we got started was we were looking at, well, what does the future of the internet look like? And the future of the internet is very solidly rooted in being able to have transactions in a P2P fashion that don't require an intermediary like a bank, right? Or for that matter, a YouTube. And these transactions, for the most part, have been financial. But actually, if we expand or extrapolate, these transactions could be anything. It could be buying an MP3 from back in the day to, buying a video today. Those are all transactions. And the internet never really had a mechanism to do this in an open fashion. We've always relied on banks and other things. So this idea, coupled with sort of my background, which is, I've worked for many years in companies where we connect consumers to businesses or businesses to consumers. And the goal was, well, how do you drive engagement and retention for those businesses amongst their customers? And if you apply these two things together, you start to look at, all right, interesting. You've got this Web3 world where the same problems exist, but there's no solutions for it. And so we started with a very simple hypothesis, which is let's build MailChimp for Web3, right? And as we realized that actually the consumer base, their technology, as well as the business base just wasn't there. But when you flip what is essentially a private message between two people into a public message, aka a forum, that's when you realize you can do the exact same thing, which is connect businesses to people, just in a much more public way. And that's kind of led us to Solarplex, where we started with completely on-chain forums last year called Dispatch Forums. We worked with the likes of DJ Nape Academy, Solana Spaces. We did a bunch of iteration around Breakpoint. We had a lot of learnings. We realized that creating just a protocol is not enough. You need to create a product. So we launched Solarplex V1 right around the time that Grizzlython was happening in Solana. We had a bunch of people start to use it. We had, a lot of people using it as a product hunt for Solana. And discussions started on that. We had a bunch of AMAs. And we took all of those learnings and drove it into Solarplex V2, which is kind of what you see today.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I guess right now it's dominated by Web3 users. What is your kind of goal with it? Are you guys trying to look to kind of just have a ton of people who are using crypto, or are you trying to expand outside of crypto?
Another
Given,
good
I mean, you're
question.
just starting out.
Yeah, I think we want to build an app for the average consumer, both on the creator side and on the consumer slash audience side. So ideally, the way we have built the app even today has been around investing a lot of effort into the user experience. We use email as your primary decentralized means of identity because it's already there. It is decentralized, right? And we use the ability for you to connect a wallet to claim your apps, claim your reactions, claim your points, and stuff like that. However, we imagine very, very quickly with a lot of the innovations coming out from the ecosystem that a wallet is not going to be needed to use a site like Solarplex. So everything is going to be keyed by your email, which is why our fundamental building block has been let's start with sort of the niche that exists today, but build with a line of sight to the average person that doesn't know or wants to know about wallets. They should just be in the background. And so if you use the site today, you'll realize the only time you need a wallet is when you collect a reaction or a point, and otherwise you don't. And in the future, you won't even need this. The consumer will never need to worry about this. So what does it really mean? What it means is the ideal case could be you come in, you pay with a credit card to buy, $5 a month worth of credits, let's call them. And then you use these credits to pay for whatever micro content you want on the site.
Awesome. Yeah. So, kind of diving a little bit deeper into the reactions, like that's like I've been using the app for a little bit, and that's kind of been a fun thing for me. Like, how did you guys kind of come up with that, and like, what have you seen that feature benefits for the app?
Yeah, we've been heavily inspired by sort of stickers in WhatsApp and Line, right? I mean, these have been sort of around for a while. Um, but one of the things we realized about sort of, there's these two kinds of modes of communication. You've got one-to-one or group chats, and you've got public sort of forums like Reddit and Twitter. And we are also inspired by Reddit, actually, in terms of the ability to collect karma, to collect badges, to give Reddit users gold. And if you see what Reddit does today, you buy digital Reddit gold for $3 and you can give, based on nice comments, right? If you fuse them together, we were like, well, why is it that Reddit gold is worth nothing off of Reddit, right? Why is it that Reddit stickers are worth nothing? You can't even use them anywhere. And we have the ability here to make them much more general. So we took a leaf out of sort of Facebook reactions or LinkedIn reactions and Reddit, and we combined them together to create the reaction packs, where we now work with artists to create really fun reaction packs. And going back to our mission of creating the best way for creators to engage and retain their audience, what this becomes is it's ownable by anyone. It becomes tradable, although I imagine that these are all compressed NFTs, and as we know, these are not trying to be PFP projects, right? The tradable just aspect is mostly about collectibles and being able to find things that you care about, just like, trading cards, for instance. So there's a collectible mentality. There's an artist being able to, sort of drive their brand forward. Because now, if I particularly like an artist X and I use their reaction on a post made by person Y, a lot of other people see that reaction. And now that artist is seeing their work used everywhere. And we think that's really cool for artists, right? Similarly, anybody who's making a comic book, they might have a comic book character as a reaction, right? And then you're like, hey, what is this comic book? And maybe you go buy that. And what we've already seen on Solarplex is people getting exposed to different artists through reactions and then going and buying their art. And you can imagine how this can be extrapolated to videos, music, comic books, any kind of digital asset. This becomes the billboard, if you will, for that creator. And we think that that is, one of the most fun ways to discover new kinds of content that you might be interested in, which is not just controlled by, algorithms like TikTok, because there you have no control and it's too personalized. And we believe that serendipity is really important. And I think this contributes to that.
That's really cool. So another feature that you guys have that's like really good at supporting creators is like the tipping feature.
Mhm.
And how do you kind of see that being used like more broadly, and like how do you think users are gonna continue to use this feature in the future?
Yeah. Tipping is very interesting as a feature because it creates it's the beginning of something that the internet has tried a lot, which is microtransactions. A lot of people have tried microtransactions, and they haven't really worked out so far. And there's a lot of reasons, probably there, and we've sort of done a lot of reading and research into why. We've talked to a bunch of people. Um, but I think the fundamental thing, if you step all the way back away from tipping, is recognition, right? Ultimately, creators want to recognize their audience by giving them rewards, but audiences want to recognize the people that they care about. And today, there is no easy way for you to recognize or reward the people you care about, or even, for instance, fund them in a way that makes sense, right? Like, as an example, BTS in Korea is the only company or band in the world that has their own shares. I mean, maybe Beyonce could do this. Maybe, people of that caliber could do this, right? And then if you wanted to contribute to Beyonce beyond just buying their albums, you would buy a share or BTS shares, as people already do, right? That is a very, very hard thing to do in the regular world because of regulation, all these things. And so we see tipping as the first step towards creators being recognized directly by the audience, right? And some people have experimented with, I think Drip House does a great job in sort of showcasing sort of, recognition in that way. And we feel like, yes, that's exactly the right way to think about it, because what crypto really brings to the masses is the ability to do microtransactions as recognition for their favorite creators. And what can we do to really expand the horizons and scope of this is kind of our goal there.
Okay, that's really cool. So you were saying that at the beginning you kind of realized that you could not like use a protocol. So I kind of want to just expand on kind of the lessons that you've been learning like throughout the building of it, because I assume building a social network, there's a lot of unexpected things that kind of come to you. So
Yeah,
could you talk about some of those?
for sure. It's not so much that we didn't want to build a protocol. What we discovered is that, there's a reason why protocols have been protocols before. Like, when you think about email and the web, they were built by not-for-profit systems and just made open, and then everybody, came onto them, which is fine. But what we see that happened next is that because the protocols couldn't keep up with demand, they didn't iterate, companies had to step in and build products on top of those protocols that no longer were open. And here's where we are. You've got Gmail that offers you spam, but in a non-open way. They offer you attachments in a non-open way. If I send you a link to Google Docs in Gmail, you can see the Google Doc in the comment. If I read the same email on Apple Mail, you won't be able to see it because it's very custom, right? So what we found is that open protocols eventually got subsumed by closed products built on top of them. And the reason was protocols didn't evolve. So we come to the crypto world where protocols have led, the way of innovation so far. One reason that has worked is they can evolve because they have monetization behind them, which leads to rug pulls and stuff, but that's a separate thing altogether. But the evolution of protocols is great, but one of the fundamental things that's lacking, at least for us, has been distribution. How does somebody find your protocol? And what does it mean for the average user to find a protocol? Unless you see an app built on top of it, you really cannot use that protocol. And if I build a protocol, what incentive does anybody else have to use mine? Because they want to capture value. They would rather build their own protocol than to use mine. Because, why else would how would they capture value? So these are like interesting dynamics that we've seen in the crypto space. And so what we came up with was, let's just invert this. Let's find a thing that people care about and build it protocol first, but not build the protocol first and build an app on that. So we've kind of almost, we use a term that has been around for some time now, a product-led protocol, where ultimately the product, you're making a product in the same way as a Web2 company might. You're looking at users, you're doing analytics, you're figuring out what works, what doesn't work, but the engineering behind it is protocol-led. Every decision we take will be, is this at the protocol level or the app level? And having this distinction makes it easy because you are consistently iterating the protocol by data from the app. And that's kind of how we think about Solarplex.
Okay. So I think one of the big problems with a lot of social networks is like building a network effect. So like, what are kind of your plans to like build a network effect on Solarplex so that people come to Solarplex because they need to be on Solarplex, at least
Yeah.
in certain spaces? Yeah.
Um, you know, Somebody had this really interesting quote, something about incentives. I think it might have been Charlie Munger or someone. It's like, show me the incentive and I will show you the path or something like that. So it all boils down to incentives. People come to social networks for, in my opinion, at least two things. They come for interesting content or they come for their friends, right? If you start either way, you'll be able to draw them. And, when we think about acquiring network effects, I think the question is, well, what is the incentive for someone to drive the network effects, right? It's because you enjoy being in a community and you want to you want to not buy your way into, but sort of invite people into that community, right? So the way we think about this is traditional social media has been about individuals. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's all about you, right? The person. Reddit is an interesting thing about communities, but not quite. And we think that starting community first allows us to drive very interesting network effects because people, first and foremost, come in and align with a community of their choice. They engage with the people and the content in that community very specifically. And then you can expose them to things they are interested in, which they didn't know existed, and drive network effects there. So we think that communities form the mainstay of the network effects on Solarplex. And that's why our focus is who are the leaders of that community and how can we incentivize them to bring people on and for people to bring on and incentivize more creators to come on. It's sort of a two-way sort of thing. Um, and I think that's kind of our hypothesis here, which is that starting with communities is what allows us drivers. But we don't have the answers yet. We, like you said, we're early enough that we have hypotheses and sort of some ideas, but we'll find out in 6 months.
Yeah. I guess one thing I noticed while using your app is that there's a lot less like wallet interactions compared to most like Web3 protocols. And I think that's really made a better user experience. Like, what do you think the importance of this is?
Yeah. Well, number one, everything is happening in the background. So the good thing is that all your interactions on the app are actually going through a background service that is able to then determine whether to give you points for that, whether to drop you an NFT. And all of these things are sort of, it's almost like once you add a credit card to your e-commerce website, you just click buy and you're done, right? Well, we imagine that that's what wallets are in some way, right? When you want to tip somebody, it should just be there. And so, we have the ability to make everything go to the blockchain. And we choose not to do a lot of these things because it doesn't make sense. But for the incentives layer, we do push it to the blockchain layer. And I think that the user experience of getting your incentive rewards in a way that you're not tied to a crypto wallet extension as we know it today is super important because we want to onboard the average person that doesn't know about crypto or is skeptical or is afraid of scams, right? And a fundamental thing we always sort of look at is how do you get that first 1 cent into somebody's wallet that has never done crypto before? It's impossible right now. Like you have to connect KYC, you've got to go and transfer, you've got to buy some Sol or ETH or whatever you have, you've got to transfer it into your wallet. That's a pretty high barrier for adoption. Which is why in our system, the way we think about it is a wallet is a receptacle for your incentives and your rewards. That wallet can be either one you hold, or you can have somebody else hold it for you, like a, custodial setup. Either way, you as a customer do not need to know how it works in the background. In the same way that, on this call, we're probably using half a dozen different protocols to talk to each other and record and upload, and all these things happen transparently. But from a user experience perspective, you click the button record and it just works. No one's saying, are you using Google Cloud or Amazon, right? In the same way, why should anybody care whether we use custodial wallets or non-custodial wallets or whatever, as long as you get the job done. And I think bringing that lens is very important to us.
So when you guys built out Solarplex, you had like a bunch of different options on the chains that you chose to build it on. Why did you choose to build on top of Solana rather than any of the other options?
Yeah. I mean, I love that question because this is a broad answer, right? There's so many things you could cover, but if I were to break it down, I think there's two fundamental things. There's the technology and the community, right? The technology is, the ability to build on Solana is so much closer to building a app on Linux in our mind that it's something that you know how to do already. The conceptual models make sense and the speed of it made sense. So from a builder's perspective, from an operator's perspective, it makes a lot more sense than most other chains we came across, right? But what has kept us here from the very beginning is the type of people we've met in the community. I think, the Solana community amongst it has some of the most amazing founders, builders, everybody of that ilk, the product people, the marketing people, the community folks, and the users. They're all very, very fun to hang out with. And, building a community app and having for every app, you need your sort of beta testers, right? And having a beta community. What better than the most involved community that is actually a lot of fun and has good vibes on it? And we found that Solana just had that. So both things worked out really well.
So I guess kind of zooming out to the broader crypto ecosystem, what like really excites you? Like other than what you're working on, like what other things around the ecosystem kind of like are you looking forward to and really interest you?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's I think different classes of things. I think the decentralized physical infrastructure stuff is really interesting. I took a decentralized Uber last year in at Breakpoint
Oh,
from Teleport, which was really cool to see that you could run an Uber style infrastructure on Solana. I've played around with the Helium mobile phones and the SIM cards around that. That's been really cool. Those are two that I've particularly played around with, so I can say, hey, I really enjoyed the experience because it's exactly in the same sort of conceptual world as I would like it to be, which is I'm doing a ride, I'm doing a phone call without worrying about the fact that it's decentralized. I have no concept of a wallet in an Uber. I just click a button and it's done, right? Same thing with a phone. Yeah, there might be a wallet somewhere, but as a phone user, I don't care. That's really exciting to me because it shows the path towards implementing um, technologies, powered by crypto in a way that you don't need wallets first, which I think is really interesting. Um, the other thing is around sort of information on the blockchain that is private by default. Right now, everything is public. It's an auditable ledger of blah, blah, blah. We all know this. But there are reasons to have privacy on the blockchain. Like, for instance, if you take it purely from a non-financial perspective, think about cookies, right? A cookie, it just has all of my browsing history on it. And if I store them on the blockchain and it's not encrypted or not private, I'm going to get spammed by everyone. So people who are building stuff like that, like, elusive, or people who are building, zero knowledge stuff, that's really interesting to me because it showcases a world where data that is owned by a consumer is in the hands of the consumer and not in the hands of a company, which is so far what the model has been. What that means in, as a side effect or a future effect, second order effect, is the business models are completely different. So things like elusive and ZK stuff, give us a line of sight towards non-advertising business models, which we haven't known before. And when I think about the opportunity here, it's like, well, Google built itself and Facebook built itself on ads, and they're the two biggest companies in the world. Well, if you have a brand new business model line of sight towards it, the sheer amount of stuff that's possible is so vast that you can't even predict it, and that's exciting.
yeah. I think this is a good way to end it off. Thank you for coming on to Into the Forest with Pine.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.